I saw 4 people die over the weekend.
This is turning into Oprah now.
Wow. Yeah.
Is this gonna be like that's a crazy story? Is that gonna be? We're gonna share some positive shit. I feel like.
There's a positive part of it, but there's also like a horrible part of it. Right. Yeah. You want to hear the story?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to play therapist.
This is fresh. I'm fine, but can't say that about everybody involved. It was so okay. Backstory is this past weekend, I was invited to go on a little camping trip from Saturday morning till like Sunday afternoon. Some buddies I haven't seen in 10 years. Like I was close with them in high school, college. Like these are like some of the people that I was like best friends with. Just they, had families, this and that, and and I moved up to Orlando, and so I've just been disconnected with. I think out of the 8 of us, there's probably 3 or 4 that I haven't seen in like 10 years. One of them is the one that invited me. I've been connected with over the years, and then 2 guys I hadn't met before. So anyways, we are on our way from Fort Lauderdale to the Peace River is where we were going to go camping. We're driving, I think we took like 27, then we're on Highway 70. It's like a one-way in each direction highway, right? Which, like, those kind of always sketch me out, right? Because you're just, there's no median, you're just buzzing by everybody.
Like going down to the Keys.
Exactly, yes. Right. And so as we're like 30 minutes from our destination, and we're approaching, and I see smoke, just black smoke coming up from the road, and I was like, shit. I pulled out my phone. I actually have video on my phone of what we approached. As we start going and cars start turning and going around, there's this really bad accident. There's a white, like a work van in our lane. It turns out that was coming from the opposite direction, and it veered out into our lane. The SUV, which is now on the side of the road, just boom, head on. Full head-on collision at 70 plus 70, right? Whoa. The van is fucking full. It's a torch, okay? And we see one woman standing on her phone, like close by, but I'm like, okay, sometimes you see an accident, you see like 4 people outside talk, so you kind of know nobody's panicking. You assume in those cases, those are the people that were in the cars. Everybody's
right.
good.
Just a fender, bro.
All right, but why is there one lady out of 2, a van and an SUV, that didn't make sense? And it seemed very fresh. Like this thing was just torching. So I'm telling my buddies, by the way, like the 5-10 cars, I would say probably happened a minute before we got there. So think about how many cars passed by in a minute. So I would say 30 cars went around this, if I had to guess. Okay, we're coming up, and I'm like, one of my buddies in the car is like, hey man, he's like, fucking burn rubber, he's like, go around this shit, and I'm like, no, like, dude, this is fucked up, like, this is not like handled. We pull over, I jump out of the car, and I run toward it. As I'm running, there's an older gentleman that parked behind us. He's running. Turns out he's actually an off-duty sheriff. I didn't know this till a little later, but fucking thank God this dude was like, he was on it. So we run up together. We see this lady on her phone. The weird part is when one of our friends called 911, they said they hadn't, it was like a new call. I'm like, what is this lady? She wasn't helping doing anything. She wasn't checking on the cars, and she was on the phone with God knows who, right? We run around the van. There's a guy fucking laying on the ground face down. His feet are still like in the van out of like the big sliding door, starting to catch fire. Right? And me and the older guy, he goes, grab his arm, let's get, like, we had run up to this van that's like, the whole front seat, over the roof, everything is on fire. It's a fireball, right? Like, hot, like, to approach it. I was really surprised that I didn't have, like, singed eyebrows from getting as close, because it was like a heat wave. And I'm like, let's fucking do this fast, because I'm thinking this thing might explode. So we grab the dude, drag him out, because he seemed like he was still alive. It was actually, we couldn't even tell the way he was, right? He's face down. It's like it was like a Mexican dude with his like, he had like a yellow, like neon yellow jeans, boots, like kind of, I think he was like a construction worker or something. He had that whole outfit on, And first of all, I didn't like ever really think about it. It's like it's fucking hard to pull a body across like concrete and dirt and shit. You know, like this dude's heavy. I'm like thinking now, I'm like, man, I should start doing that in my workouts. It's like dragging things across the ground or something, because like it could actually be useful. So we yanked this guy and fucking pull him back, and he is alive. He's just like he's moaning and like fucked up. You could tell through his jeans his calf was just a compound fracture, snapped, fucking hanging like just a wet noodle. His mouth was busted, split open here to here. So this was all just opened up and fucking like. So he must have smashed his head into he was in the back seat, and he was had blood all over his head and stuff. Nothing. He was still breathing, so his airway was clear. He had no massive bleeding. So when we pulled him, it wasn't like there was like a streak of blood. So he was luckily like the sheriff guy actually had a tourniquet on him. Well, I think he ran back to his car and got one, but he didn't need to use it. And we pulled this guy. As soon as we got him like say 15, 20 feet away from the van, we ran over to the SUV and to see if there was anybody in there alive. You just see an old dude slumped over in the front seat. The entire like fucking front of the car is pressed up against him. He's gone. So the sheriff dude, I wish I like got his name and stuff, but he's like they're gone, and I'm like he's like, yeah, there's a woman in the past. So it was like old couple in the front seat, fucking dead, like at the scene. Hopefully on impact. I was like thinking, I was like, oh my god, imagine if like the old guy like was still a little bit awake and looks over and like sees his wife gone. I mean, because she was even more smashed. That side was like just crushed. So that couple done. Then we go back to the guy that we pulled out. We pull him further, and he's basically he goes, hey, call 911. Even though we know like we were pretty sure, like we didn't know for 100% that other people called. I call the sheriff guy. It was great because he's like, I'm like, fuck, I don't even know where to tell him. He goes, he goes, let me tell. I put him on speakerphone. He's like, we're 30 miles south of this. We got this. He's like naming the codes. We've got 2 blah 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 and 1 this. We need an ambulance. Da da da. So they're like, yes, we got the call, but we're help is on the way. Great. Okay. So we confirmed.
Meanwhile, one of the cars is totally on fire.
Dude, it was just a fireball. And my friend told me, because I was paying attention to the guy and trying to, hey man, come on, stay awake. He like we're trying to. I was with him for like 20 minutes, just talking to him to try to keep him, It
took that long for any like medical attention?
Yes, because we're in the middle of fucking nowhere. Wow. That's what's also scary about those roads. Like, not only are they these like death trap, head-on collision. If you thought you could pass the car, I don't know what happened there, but I found an article online. Well, then finally the ambulance shows up. It was 2 guys. They needed our help to get this guy on the stretcher. I mean, it was helpful that we were there. So the 4 of us now, two medics, and then me and the sheriff guy, lift him on the stretcher, fucking pick him up. My buddy had also hopped out shortly after I did, and he kind of helped in some of it. But we get this guy on the stretcher. They put him in the ambulance. So he was still breathing, but he was never able to comprehend. He was like, when we were like, hey man, can you hear us? And he's just like this poor guy. Oh God, I would say late 30s, 40.
Okay.
Yeah. Or no, maybe early 40s. Yeah. I would say early 40s. Probably a little older than me. I'm 39. Yeah, he was a few years older than me, and they got him in the ambulance. Then the firefighters are putting out the car, and you just see all these crazy sparks because the battery was on fire. So my buddy told me later, he's like, yeah, man, after you guys pulled that guy out, like there was like 2 more explosions. Like that car like had 2 more like just like where it just yeah. So I mean, I was very lucky that the timing of it when I was up like this close to it. I mean, I guess the length of a guy, so 5 feet. Right. I was like pretty short, right?
It's hot as fuck though.
It was fucking hot, man. It was like crazy, when you're like at Universal Studios and a flame comes out of a ride and you're like, holy shit! It's like you feel the heat from like 30 feet away.
Right.
Well, if you were 5-6 feet away,
right.
that's what it was like, right?
Sure.
So imagine I was like, oh shit! Like I was even thinking to myself afterwards. I was like, oh my god, if that guy was still in the van and maybe strapped in, like it was like, man, I would have had to decide like I'm gonna get fucked up to help him. Like, I mean, luckily it was I didn't get burned or anything, and if I got a little singed up, like not a big deal if I could save this dude or whatever, help out, with this other guy. But I was like, man, I mean, like kind of we were lucky that he got himself out that far that we didn't have to go into this thing. I mean, that would have been it was scary as it is. It could have been like a nightmare. Right. Anyways, after they put out the hose, the sheriff guy came over. He's like, hey, yeah, there was 2 other guys in the front of the van.
The van that you pulled, that was on fire.
Damn.
So that guy went from the back to the front.
No, he came out of the side door, so he was in that back seat next to the side door.
Okay.
The 2 guys that were up in the driver and the passenger seat in the front, roasted.
Wow.
In fact, that's why I remember like seeing it. I'm like, what the fuck is that? There was a black ball like above the door hanging out. That was the fucking skull of the dude in the passenger seat that just like toasted down to his skull. And that's what the sheriff guy goes. He came over and he goes, hey, he goes, yeah, there was 2 more people over there. They're in the front seat. I go, shit. Because I was like, we got. At least we saved the van guy.
Right.
It's like, no, we saved 1 of the 3 van guys. And he goes, are you military? I'm like, no. He goes, well, I wouldn't look at it if I were you. He's like, there's fucking just 2 black skeletons in the front.
Holy
but I
shit.
saw. I mean, it's like I have a picture of it. Like I have because I took a picture from far away of like the scene, and I took pictures of the license plate. I was basically trying to get anything that could be maybe helpful. No one even asked me shit. Like literally nobody came and like, hey, because
Debriefed
we
you
were
on
the
what
only
you
people
saw.
there. Like,
Right.
and by the way, traffic in both directions was just completely stopped for miles.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
we're
no, for
in the
sure.
epicenter of this inferno. I mean, it was like a little war zone,
How many cars total?
2.
Just the 2.
Just 2.
Okay.
Boom.
And one flips,
So-
rolls.
So the van ended up like, I imagine. So they're one's heading. They're heading in opposite directions. This van veered us out. I guess. Boom. I think they kind of like hit driver side
To driver.
to driver side, and the SUV ended up off the road, and the van was in that lane that it had veered into. So yeah, the SUV was it actually hit the like barbed wire. So in fact, that was another thing. Like when I was like kind of climbing over this shit. My legs got a little cut up because I'm climbing over barbed wire. I'm walking through this like high grass that was all fucked up. And so the only thing that happened to me was like I got a little like scratched up, but I had like the dude's blood on me and stuff. It was a fucking crazy morning for Saturday going to this thing. And then I was thinking about all the people that just went around this thing. And as soon as you go, like, I get that when we were approaching, yes, there was a woman on her phone, calm, which was odd, because there was still a dude hanging out of the van on the other side of the van, right? But people were coming from both directions. That means people were driving by while there's a guy on the ground, or maybe even saw him like slowly like sliding out of the van, and just fucking went about their day. And like, by the way, it was a Saturday morning. What are you going, fishing or whatever? Like, what the fuck are you doing
Right.
that you couldn't stop? Like, you're not going to work, and even if you had to go to work and like stop to maybe help somebody, it was kind of wild. I was like, holy shit! I hope I don't ever need help from strangers, because
Yeah.
most of them just fucking bailed. So that was actually like one of the things like that like had me reflecting the most after. I was like, oh my god, man! I'm like, nobody did shit. Like it was so many people that just went around it. I'm like, that actually, like, I don't have any like I had a bunch of people because I posted a little thing on Instagram like right after it happened, like, and people were like, oh man, I hope you're okay. That's tough to see. I'm like, I'm not like squeamish about that stuff. Like my mom was a nurse, like she's retired, but every dinner story was like some crazy shit that happened. I'm too curious. I've seen all kinds of weird fucked up shit online, like so there's nothing I guess my eyes haven't seen. And like, honestly, like if you've seen like some shit on Live Leak or whatever, it's like kind of the same thing in person, right? It's not like, oh my god, but I can imagine if you've never seen any of that, it would be pretty fucking traumatic. I think my friend is like still processing it. And anyways, I'm not like scarred from it or anything. However, I mean, obviously horrible for these families. There's gonna be grandma and grandpa didn't make it home from their trip to Florida. They were from like Indiana or something. And then this dude's gonna wake up in the hospital and find out that his two like work buddies died in that accident, and another couple. I mean, it's like horrible, repercussions that will just spread across two groups of people, right? But I'm like, man, if we went around it and I looked back and saw the dude coming out of the van, and then like would have probably been, because I'm in the back seat of my buddy's truck, like, oh wait, no, go back. It's like too late to turn around. That I would have had trouble dealing with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If we passed it and I saw that there was still a person coming out of the inferno, not yet on fire, but probably very soon to, that would have been really hard to like take in. That like I wouldn't have slept well if that was the case. Yeah,
that's crazy. Do you know like after that happened, did the cops talk to you a lot about what you saw?
No, nobody asked me anything.
That's crazy. It's
yeah,
like
that was,
20 minutes
but maybe because the sheriff guy was so on it, because he went up and he was talking to them.
So you think maybe he already did that?
He probably
for them in some
he
capacity?
probably gave enough information, and it's not like I didn't see it, and he knew that I didn't see it happen because he came right behind us, so, and it was already so it's not like if I had seen it, because he asked me, did you see it? I'm like, no. So if I had told him I did, he would have told them, like, talk to this guy, he saw it, so I don't think it was out of like negligence or anything that I wasn't spoken to about it, but yeah, I did see an article. I found it in the news, like the Arcadia news, about head-on collision, old couple in their late 70s from Indiana, and two on it. They said that the two guys were yet to be identified. Who they are?
Guys.
Yeah.
Well, the other guy survived because he could identify them.
He survived. Yeah, but he's probably in a coma right now. I mean, he probably got put in a medically induced coma or something. I mean, he was probably had internal shit going on. They probably take him out to like just
veg for a month to heal.
Yes, exactly. It'd probably be very painful to have kept him awake. So it was a wild fucking Saturday morning, to say the least.
Fuck, that sucks.
Yeah, it was crazy. I told you I had a story, insane. Man. That was like I've never come up to like a scene like that or anything before.
Are you having like nightmares or flashbacks of that?
No, I'm not. I don't.
That's surprising.
Well, I'll tell you what. I told him. I said this to my buddy because he was asking me. My friend that like ran out of the. So out of the four of us, two of us got out of the truck, and my one buddy, was shortly behind me in approaching. So he kind of saw everything, and he was asking me about that. He's like, is that like fucking with you or what, man? He's like, I'm still processing this thing. He's like, cause he just like was so fixated on it the whole weekend, like, man. Yeah. And I go, no, I'm not. I said, I'm actually like, I'm happy, like in some weird way. I'm happy that we were there because it would have been one more death in that had we not been, for sure. The guy's like feet were on fire. Like he was, and actually, if I show you the picture on my phone, I could show you that like right there where it's an inferno. He was in that spot, like where it was, a few minutes later was all like the ground was on fire, Mm-hmm. So I'm like, no, I feel like we were lucky to have been there at that moment, and. Like we were thinking about a couple things that like, okay, on the way there, before that happened, we got to this gas station. We had to make a little pit stop. And we pull in to this gas station, not to get gas, but just a couple guys wanted to hop out. I think they had to get ice or something for the cooler. Whatever it was, some guy in a big some big truck with like a trailer in the back or something comes in like after we're already like between the gas station and the pump, and like wedges us in. And now it's like, dude, we can't fucking move. You can't, like, would you pull in as this other we're in a big F-150 extended cab, and the guy's looking at us like, what are you doing? And like and then he's coming like, oh my God, he's going. So we got kind of stuck by this guy for like a minute, right? And we were like, what a fucking idiot, and we're just like talking about how like this moron like, wedged us in, and like we couldn't move, and back up. No, we can't back up. And so we were kind of like stuck at the gas station. It was like a minute delay. And I'm like, if that guy didn't wedge us in there, like either one, we would have passed and that dude would have burned alive because probably nobody else would have helped, or that sheriff guy would have been on his own, which would have really fucking sucked. Or We could have been the ones that van veered out in front of. How crazy is that? You know, like it's like those little, like it's like the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
But I'm like so I'm not focused on what if, like the bad and then name all the bad things. I'm like, well, or I guess what I should say is I'm not focused on the bad things that happened. That's not in our control, right? Like we didn't do anything to cause it, so I don't have any guilt, right? I'm not gonna lose sleep because I feel guilty. Like I said, I would feel guilty if we went around it and then I caught a glimpse at like, oh my God, there was somebody still there. So I'm not gonna lose sleep. I'm not having nightmares. I have no guilt in that situation. If anything, I'm glad I did something that at the time was like kind of fucking frightening, because my buddy's in the car. He's like, it's gonna explode, don't it? And like him saying that over and over, I was like, fuck. I mean, yeah, maybe. I'm like trying not to think about that. Like, you know, I'm trying to think of like what I can do to help, not what can go wrong to me, right. Even though he's being completely rational, you know. So I guess that's like, you know, the thing is like, you know, trying to maybe put your safety aside a little bit for somebody else, right? And by the way, not like to say that like, oh my God, I you know how awesome of me. This is what fucking cops and firefighters do every day. They are signing up for, you know. It's because I was thinking about that too. I was like, man, that was intense. I'm like, but when the firefighters got there, I'm like, they have to run toward danger all the time. That's their job.
Isn't that outlier. That was freaking Tuesday.
Exactly. That's what I said. Right? I literally said, I'm like, that's a Tuesday to these guys. Yeah. Like that is not special, you know. So like, I'm not like, you know, it's crazy. Because that's not my job. Like I don't have a job that requires me to be, you know, running, you know, to the call of accidents and stuff. But we were in the right place at the right time, because again, like the nearest help was 20 minutes away or whatever, and nobody else was helping out. And it was like, that was actually the part that was like, for me, hard to like think about. I was like, man, that's kind of fucking nuts that, you know, nobody did that.
It's funny. My wife and I have this like pseudo argument a lot, because that's very much when I see an accident, I'm very much like, let me get out and direct traffic. I insert myself because I feel like I have a level head. I'm pretty intelligent. And I can make some use of my physicality or my direction, because especially you see some of these accidents, people are like, they don't know what the fuck's going on and they're just frazzled, and you got one guy still like, you're like, no one's clearly giving direction to make this situation better, right? Or move it along. Yeah. And my wife's always like, stay in the fucking car, like always yells at me. And I know, like, and her logic is just like, she's like, that's a bad environment, whether something explodes or another car hits someone, they're not paying attention. Just why insert if it's a drive, you know, if someone shoots somebody because they're pissed off, and she's always like operating from that position. But yeah, it's hard to imagine like, just being like, oh fuck, I got somewhere to be. Oh, that sucks. Yeah. I got somewhere to be.
I will say this too. And when my buddy asked me about, you know, it's like, hey, are you like, you know, is this like fucking with you or whatever? I was like, I go, you know what? I said, unfortunately, I kind of had to go through the like mental gymnastics and the what ifs when my sister was killed by a drunk driver back in 2007. So at that time, yeah, of course, I had a year of my life that I was like processing. You know what I mean? It's like, so I already did that whole thing and had to figure out what the healthy way to deal and handle it was then. So it's, I guess in a way, I kind of just like, I don't even go to the things that are like useless to run through your head, you know, and yeah, I guess, so I told him, I was like, I guess maybe I've done that exercise before and you're doing it for the first time, you know? Yeah. So that's probably why we also have a big difference of how we're thinking about what we just saw, you know? So yeah, and like you just said, you know, if you're level-headed, it's like, well, sometimes I guess like you kind of have to almost think like, hey, maybe I am more level-headed than most, and this situation could probably really use that you know, quality of yours, and that's a great time to lend it. And I've been told before, I have a friend who's like, you're like emotionless, like you don't like, I'm like, no, I'm like, I just save my fucks for important things, right? Like I do give a fuck, You know, like I've been told this by a few, usually like female friends in my life, that I'm not being sympathetic, but I'm like, I just think that these are very small problems. I'm sorry if they're big to you, but I guess like I'm the wrong person to look for sympathy. I've seen worse problems. I've had worse problems. This is fucking, child's play.
You're starting to sound a little like a psychopath.
Yeah,
you might want to scale it back a little bit.
Like,
just want to say, like you went down that rabbit hole of how unfeeling and unattached you are to life for so long. I was like, I gotta do the friend break pump here.
I appreciate that, and it's just, I guess I'm just like a realist kind of, I'm not, right. I'm not like, and like this is a real problem. Like that's a problem where it's like, hey, if you're gonna think on behalf of the other person, like now's a good time to do it. You know what I mean? Not like, oh, so like this guy won't call me back, and like I don't know. It's like, all right, just fucking move on. Like, like that's how I am in those situations. But like this is one where it's like, a lot of people will be like, not my problem.